So, can you hear me in the back anyway?
Yeah.
Okay, so, what are auto-locking containers and why should you use them? Okay, so first things first, my name's Courtenay. I'm a developer. I've been a developer for 25 years plus. Long-standing gig. Where I currently work at the moment, I'm a technical architect and evangelist. So I get to play with all the nice toys. But as I say, I've got 25 years experience off and on. So I suspect, like most people here, fairly multilingual when it comes to languages and frameworks and everything else. The talk I'm doing today is largely focused on, well, it is entirely focused on C#, but the ideas, the principles are transferable to everything else. Okay, so you can transfer these ideas to Java, you can transfer them, basically do anything that has a control framework or has a testing framework or a mocking framework. These ideas are universal, but we'll be demonstrating them use the magic C#. As I say, I mean, although I've had 25 years experience as a developer, I really started on things like the Spectrum and the BBC Micro before moving on to the Amiga and going to the dark side. I am an infrequent blogger, very, very, very infrequent. I'll have short sporadic bursts of activity. But if you're more than welcome to have a look at the site, if there's anything interesting there, fine. If not, don't blame me. You can also send me a tweet anytime you like. I might reply to you in about 3 minutes' time if I get around to it. I'm also the dual monitor world speed reading champion. Yeah, absolutely. I've trained myself to look independently with both eyes. So, basic, the agenda for today. We're just going to have a basic overview of what we're dealing with an auto-locking container. And then we're going to go into demo. Okay? And that's pretty much what it is. Pretty much going to be code right the way through it. I mean, how many people actually like looking at slides? 0. Brilliant. How many people actually prefer watching code? All right, so we're the right decision. So, how many people have used auto-locking containers? A few hands. Okay. How many people are familiar with the idea of mocking? Brilliant. How many people use dependency injection containers? You're a fluent bunch. Excellent. So, an auto-locking container is nothing more, effectively, than a specialized inversion and control container. That's it. That really is it. It's a specialized inversion and control container that supplies test doubles for dependencies. And by test doubles, we mean mocks, effectively. Not always, but 99% of the time, we're dealing with mocks. And if that's the only thing you take away from this, that's the only thing you need to take away from this. Okay? So, in the same way that you would use a dependency injection container or an inversion control container in your MVC application, you're using an inversion control container for your tests. And you're supplying the dependencies for the objects that you're intending to test via an inversion control container. And that's about it. So you might as well walk this up. No. So, why bother doing this? Well, let's think about the virtuous cycle when it comes to test-driven development. The virtuous cycle is to write a failing test. We then implement code to satisfy the test. Sorry?
Just for a second.
Yeah. Sorry, I just slapped it straight on. It's all right. Hey. Can you hear me now? Brilliant. So you write your failing test, you implement code to satisfy your test, and then you refactor. It's really quite simple. So you red, green, refactor. But quite often what happens is you end up writing your failing test, you implement the code to satisfy your test, and you break completely unrelated tests. And so you then fix the broken tests, and then you can go back and refactor, but you completely lose your train of thought, because you're going back and fixing tests that you haven't actually been directly touching. How many people have done this? How many times have you written tests? Right, there you go. Now this is not going to stop this situation. However, it can help to reduce this friction. And what often happens, especially if you're working with a team with people who, let's say, haven't adopted TDD as a strategy for writing code, it becomes a barrier, it becomes a friction to entry. And people resent having to go back and retest and fix their broken tests and all the rest of it. So it becomes a friction layer. So what we're trying to do is provide a way of encouraging test-driven development, but in such a way that it doesn't become painful. Okay? So enough slides. Let's write some code. So, excellent. So what we're going to do, we're going to write the world's most interesting MVC application. The world's most interesting MVC application is going to have one page, and this one page is going to have a greeting and a date. We're not going to be showing anything else apart from that. But the point is we're going to do this in a test-driven fashion. So we're going to write this from a test-first perspective as much as physically possible within the time constraints. But you will get the idea about what we're doing. Okay? So, what we'll do is we'll start by creating a new project. A new project we'll call mcdemo.web. And we'll say this is an ASP.web application, and we'll call the solution ASP.amc-demo. Okay? So, we'll create this, we'll make sure it's empty, but I'll add in the MVC core references. So, I know new gets been down, but thankfully I've made sure I've cached everything locally. NuGet currently today has 0 packages available for search, which makes life interesting. Anyway, so we have a single project, which is mcdemo.web. This has our MVC5 references, and there's nothing interesting here at all. In fact, it doesn't even run, because we haven't even got no home controller, we haven't even got a view for it to access. So this is the only thing this is going to do is give us a 404 error. Okay? We're happy with this so far? Yeah? Okay, so the next thing we'll do is we'll add a unit test project so that we can write our tests to drive the application that we're writing. Okay? So let's add a new project. This time around it'll just simply be a class library, amcdemo.web.unit.tests. Okay. So, to this project, I'm going to just, there we go. Can you see this? Right. I'm going to add a few package references. So, the first thing I need to do is I need to install a package. And I'm going to add this into my unit test project. Okay. The first thing I want is NUnit, so I want my test unit running. Okay, so I'm going to add in NUnit. Fingers crossed it's going to find it. It's probably going to turn around and say, can't get it, and then go and get it from my local app cache, please. Otherwise, this is going to be the world's shortest demo. Yay! Phew. Okay. The next thing I'm going to install is MockQ. Now, how many people have used MockQ as a mocking framework? Brilliant. How many people use Rhino mocks? Yeah. And MockQ, I think, is personally, it's my favourite mocking framework. I know a lot of people say I want Rhino mocks. Again, this is not the choice of mocking framework is not important here. It's just simply the one I am choosing to use for this demo. Okay? So, we'll add MockQ. Again, this might take some time. And there we go. I don't know if any of you have used fluent assertions. Anyone uses fluent assertions? If you don't use fluent assertions, use fluent assertions. Your test becomes so much easier to read. now. Why can't it find it? Hang on. If you can't find it, I do have. Where are they? Oh, there we go. Decided to do it this time. And last but not least, we need to make sure that we've got our ASP.NET MVC libraries in place within the test project, otherwise we're not going to be able to test. The test is going on. Okay, so the first thing we're obviously going to need in our application is a controller, a home controller. So if we're starting from a test-driven perspective, what's the very first thing we should be writing as a test to see whether we're writing a home controller? Anyone? Okay. So a home controller derives from controller. Yes? So that's the very first test. The very first test is, do we have a class that derives from controller? So that's what we'll do. I'm just going to quickly enable mcrunch here. I don't know if anybody's seen mcrunch. This is really good. This allows me to run the tests in the background as we're working. You'll see this bar down at the bottom there. When our tests actually start coming in, the bar will go green when I've got passing tests, or it'll go red when I've got failing tests, and show me how many failing tests there are. So, let's make this into a home controller test. Okay? And we'll say that this is a test fixture. So, our test. So the very first thing we need to test is whether we have a home controller and whether the home controller derives from controller. Yes? So let's make a public void sut is controller. Okay. Sut is a term that I've come across from Mark Seaman, who writes the excellent Plug blog. If you don't read that blog, I suggest you do. Ploeh.dk, I think it is. And yeah, very, very good. But sut, he refers to as the system under test. So let's make a new system under test, which will be a new home controller. No, we don't have one at the moment. But we'll just make life easy for ourselves. We'll say this will be our amcdemo.web. Can't type. Sorry. .web.controllers. Home controller. Okay, so that's red at the moment because we don't have one. And what we want to be saying is the sut should, again I can't type, be assignable to a controller. There we go. Now, that is the system-wide MVC controller. So let's just fix up our references for the moment. So we need to make, we need to make a class. So I'll go back to my Solution Explorer and I'm just simply going to create a new class called Home Controller. Okay? And the last thing I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to make sure I've got a reference going across because I don't have a reference to my web project I'm going to test yet. So let's add reference. Okay, so we have a test, and if I activate this test, we should see immediately that it fails. Bingo. Okay? All with you so far. So we have a controller that we've put in the controls folder. It isn't a controller, and so our test is going to fail. So we've got a failing test. We now need to fix it up to make sure it works. And that, of course, is easy because we then simply go to our home controller and say, this is a controller. There's now an MVC controller. Our build will kick in a second. Hang on. Sorry, things are trying to be intelligent and take over my brace button. And our test goes green. Brilliant. So we have our first test, and our first test passes. Okay? Still doesn't do anything useful because we've got a controller and it's there. Okay. So the next thing we're going to need is we're going to need an index. So we're going to need something to come in on our root, so our home controller, and return something on an index. Yes? So let's do that. So let's have a test that says we have public void index should return view. Okay. Again, let's get ourselves a sut. Stop it. There are times when resharp is wonderful. There are times it just simply gets in the way. And that is one of them. Right. So, we've got ourselves a new home controller. We'll get ourselves a result. We'll say the result is sut.index. Okay? And we'll say that the results should be type of, I think we want, yeah. And we want this to be a type of view result. I'm using a slightly different test at this point because I actually want to make sure that what I'm returning is a view. I don't want a derivation of a view. I actually want a view back at this point. Okay? So I'm using a slightly different test. But anyway, so our test our application isn't built at the moment because we don't have an index method, so let's supply one. We'll make sure this turns a view result, and we'll return view. Why isn't that working? That should be returning. Sorry. We're returning a few results. Notes. Yes. That was failing. The of type, not type of. And let's turn it into a test. It helps if I can time. And there we go. So that's a working test. Okay? Sorry, we are getting somewhere on this, so bear with me for a minute. But this is where the friction will start to come in. So we've got, so we set in the requirement that we want to be able to display the world's most interesting MVC view page, and it will have a greeting and it will have a date on it. Okay? So let's make sure this is the case. And we will change the view result. We'll return to saying, let's make sure we go, I'll return our index page. And we'll just create a view model that we're going to pass our message and our date to a view with, okay? So the easiest way of doing this actually is to new one up at this point. We'll say we'll have a greeting. There it is. And we'll say that the date is date. Now, okay. I'm just simply going to use resharp and replace the anonymous type with name class. If I do it this way, then I can say to stop me at any point. If there's anything you don't understand, please do put your hand up or please do interrupt me. Okay, so we've got a home index view model. I'm just going to move this into another folder. Because I prefer to keep my. I don't know about you, but I like the way Visual Studio gives you a models folder. But I like to keep my models separate from my view models. Okay, so I just like to put this over in the view models folder. Create that. This is the sort of thing that is fantastic. Resharpen, it just makes life easy. Okay. So I know this isn't strictly the way you would do this as a TDD developer, but we've got a limited amount of time. So we're saying that we want a view, and I'll just simply create a razor view to hold this. Go. So we're going to take our home index view model, and we'll call this demo, and the world's most interesting web page is going to say model greasing and the one day. Okay. So it should come as absolutely no surprise that when we run this, yay! Wonderful. So we have the world's most interesting NPC page. Now the requirement comes down the line that the greasing that we've hard-coded into our view actually needs to come from a greasing service. So we have an all-singing, all-dancing greeting service 5000 that's been purchased by the company you're working for, and that's the place you need to be getting your greeting message from. Okay? So, that's easy. We're going to say that there is an interface to talk to our greeting service 5000, and the greeting service 5000, so hang on, let's just stop that. So, public interface, greeting service. And this greeting service has, again, the world's most interesting interface on it. And all this does is say, get greeting. Okay? I bet you can see that one coming a mile off. So, we'll move this off into another folder. Let's just put this into services, location, create that and move it. Now, how do we get that, a reference to that service into our home controller? If we're following a dependency injection pattern here, how do we get the greeting service reference into our controller anymore? Via the constructor. So, let's add a constructor. Let's add a reference to our greeting service. And let's stash it away in a local field. And oh here, it's broken. Now, it's broken because if we go back to our tests, we've now got two tests that are instantiating a home controller. But of course you can't, but of course the home controller constructor now requires a parameter. So we've ended up breaking two tests. In fact, we've ended up breaking the entire build, but we've ended up breaking two tests that were not related to what we've just done. Because if we're following a construction injection pattern, what we're doing is we're providing the resources that the class needs. But at no point in the substance controller test or the index should return view test are we doing anything with the greeting service. Yes? So by adding a dependency to our controller, we've now broken things. So the easiest way, the way you would normally go about solving this is you'd say, we'll get a mock, and we'll put the mock in place, and then we'll new up our constructor that way, yes? So let's say, here we go, our mock is equal to new mock of greeting service. Okay, and then we take our mock and we put it into, we take the object out of the mock, we put it into the home controller. Okay. And again, we're going to have to do the same thing for the next one. that. Paste it in. Okay, so that's good. So everything goes back to green, it's running again, and everything's good with the world. But we've only just added one interface here. Remember, I've said that we've added our model has an iGreeting service. Well, guess what? The company also has an iDate service 5000, and they want to use that as well to provide the current date. So by adding another interface in, we're going to break things all over again. Because if we go back to our home controller and say that, there we go, public iDate service, interface, iDate service, and again, this is going to have the world's most interesting interface on it, so the date time gets display date. Okay, I'll just simply move that out into the location we want it to go into. Add that into our services. There we go. Ooh, right, so iDate service, date service. Well, you already know what the punchline is. At this point, everything's broken again. We haven't done anything, we haven't made any changes to the index, we haven't even made any changes to anything directly related to the stuff that we're testing. Okay? But we've broken things yet again. So yet again, we're going to have to go back into the tests and change things and add another mock. And so, of course, the more and more you're doing this, the more and more tests you're going to break. The more and more the temptation is to start copying and pasting everything. So you'll find people, setting up a number of mocks, newing up the object, passing it in. We need to stop this. So, whoops, certainly did not mean to do that. Why would you put a power button on a keyboard? Oh, for God's sake. Come back to life. I don't believe it. There we go. Oh, for God's sake. Oh, there we go. Hey! Sorry about that. Right. Okay. So I think we can see what the problem is here. So let's just take this out for a moment. We'll come back to the data service. So I'm going to go over here and we can change things up a bit. Let's go back to the package manager console and let's install. Before we install that, go away. Yes, now you've got to think about it because it's already been done. I'm going to install Castle Windsor. How many people use Castle Windsor here? Okay. Castle Windsor is quite a popular dependency injection container. How many people use Ninjax? Okay, a few people. That's good. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with Castle Windsor. So you don't need the point here is you don't actually need to know how Castle Windsor works from a detailed perspective. But, oh no, I did. So why did it not do it the first time? That's brilliant. It's absolutely fantastic. Okay. So Castle Windsor works in the same way as an inject or any other dependency injection container. What you can do is you can ask Castle Windsor for an object, and it will look at its constructor, and it will go through its list of resources and provide implementations for the construction document. So if you have told Castle Windsor that your iGreeting service has an implementation, okay, it can provide the implementation for you and insert it into the object when it's new up. But we don't want to do that. What we want to do is provide it with a mock. Okay? So if we say that we have a public class, and this will be, what will we call this? We will call this a mock resolver. And this will be an I-sub-dependency resolver. Now in Castle Winter terms, it will use a resolver for the object that you ask for. So if you ask for a home controller, so a resolved home controller, that's the dependency resolver it will use. But for anything that has to get injected into the constructor, it then uses a sub-dependency resolver. So you can use two different levels of dependency injection. Okay. So we'll implement the members. The first member is really quite simple. The first member is can resolve. So what we want to deal with is interfaces. What we want to say is if there is an interface being passed in the constructor, then yes, we can resolve it. Okay? Because if we've got an interface, we can just bug a mock around it. Yes? So what we'll do is we'll simply return whether the dependency target type is interface. Okay? Why is that? Just trying again because this. There's my target type. It's a property, isn't it? Sorry. God, it's warm in here. Is it just me or is it? It's absolute making it. Oh, it's just me. Right, so what's going to happen is this is wired in. When Castle Winter is attempting to resolve a type, it's going to come across the type, it's going to pass it and say, is this an interface? And we're going to say yes. And I'll say, great, okay, I'm now going to go ahead and resolve this. Now this is where the magic happens. So what we need to do is we need to get a mock type. So we've got an interface coming in, say ifoo. What we want is a mock of ifoo. Okay? So what we're going to say is we're going to mock type, and that's equal to type of mock. So this is an open generic type. This is the open generic type. So this is a generic type that takes one parameter. Okay? Because you can't do a type of that contains a type that you don't know up front. What you can do is you can make this a generic type. And we can make this a generic type by then passing in the dependency type. Like that. So, if dependency target type is an ifoo or an iGreeting service, what this will now get for us at the other end is a mock of iGreeting service. Okay? Now, we can new it up. So we can get our mock, and we could, what we could do here, what you expect to be able to do here is you would say activator create instance from, okay? But we're not going to do that. What we're actually going to do is we're going to get Castle Winter to do this. So we're going to get the kernel, and the kernel we haven't passed in yet, so let's pass the kernel, the Castle Winter kernel in, and again, because it's its own container, it actually supports doing this. Let's get that. Stash this away. There we go. So from the kernel, resolve the type. So there's my mock type. This is going to complain because what I actually want this to be is a mock. Let's do this and get solve the. There we go. Okay, and now we can just simply return it. So I can now return the mock object. So there is a class called the mock resolver that implements a sub-dependency resolver, and this is going to, on request, go back to, so when it sees an interface, it's actually going to go back to Castle Winter and say, actually give me a mock of this interface and get the object out and pass that back. Okay? There is a reason for this. because we're going to, later on, we're actually going to want to be able to get hold of the same thing. And if we simply activated an instance at this point and returned the object, we'd have no way of getting back to it. So by saying to Castle Winds we want you to do this, what we'll do now is we'll wire this up and we'll then say, anything you produce from this mock interface, make it, don't make it transit, make it a singleton. So we'll always get back the same instance of the mock that we've asked for. Do you see what I mean? Yeah? Okay, so this is very easy, so we just need to create a Windsor installer. So, where did that go? These pads. Right, okay. So let's call this a unit test installer. That's really what it is. So Windsor installer. Class. And we'll just implement the members. There is only one member. So container dot kernel dot resolver add subresolver. That's easy because we made that one ourselves. So there's the mocky resolver, and we're just simply going to pass in the container kernel. Okay, so that's nice and easy. And now we're going to register container.register. If I can type classes from assembly. Now this is quite nice, fluent, sort of fairly fluent syntax. I don't want from this assembly. What I want is from assembly containing. Now, our MVC application is going to have an MVC application class. So let's just say we've got an MVC application class. Okay? And so from assembly containing MVC application. So it doesn't have reference to system, there we go. And we want to pick with service itself. And these objects we want lifestyle transit. Now, I'll just explain what this is doing. So, lifestyle transit. So, when we're testing, we are testing objects from the assembly containing that application. That's the application that we're actually testing, yes? So our home controller exists in the assembly that lives in. Okay, but we're going to be testing much more than just the home controller. And the one thing we can absolutely guarantee is going to be there is the MVC application, so let's use that as our anchor. So that gets us to the assembly. Then we're going to pick, so all those classes, we'll pick them, and we'll say, with service itself, so what we want is, we want those classes to be given back to us, and we ask for them, with a transient lifestyle. So that means that every time you ask for one of these classes, I want a brand new instance. I don't want the same one. If I ask for a home controller 3 times in my test, I want a different home controller every single time. So I want to make sure that my setup is, I want to be able to control what state the classes are in, yes? I don't want a test to affect the state of a class, a previous test to affect the state of the class I'm testing, okay? So that, I want those to be transient every single time. And the next thing I want to register is component for, and this needs to be for, sorry, yes, that's right. So type of mock. So when the container is asked for a mock type, a generic mock type, now I want you to use the lifestyle singleton. So there's the mock type that we're going to resolve from there. So we're going to ask the container to resolve the mock. So that's going to come back with the mock. But every time it does it, it's going to come back with the same one. Okay, so it's going to inject a mock into the class, But if we then ask for the same mark back, we're going to get the same one back. So we get the object that we're creating is now going to have an instance of the greeting service pushed into it, but we can now get it back out. So we can go back to our tests. Let's just move these out. I'm not going to bother moving into anywhere specific on the file system. I'm just going to put them here. For the moment, these I will make available on. I will make this project available on GitHub after the event. So if for whatever reason you want to go through this, you're more than welcome. And I will tweet the location when I've created the repository. Okay, so let's get this back. So instead of creating the SUT by directly newing up the object, what we now want to do is we now want to get this through Castle Windsor. Okay? Everyone with me so far? Yeah. Great. So this is easier than it looks. So what we want to do is we want to get a container. Again, stop it. Thank you. So I'm going to get a container, and that's going to be a new Windsor container. Okay, and I'm going to install our new unit test installer. Okay, so that's now started up a Windsor container with our setup information that we've now said that we want to use. Okay, so I can now say that my SUT is equal to a container .resolve home controller, and that passes. So now I have a test that makes no reference directly to the constructor for the object I want to test. Okay? I have no reference here to the greeting service. So the greeting service has been newed up for me as a mock and has been injected into the class that I'm testing. And that, in essence, is exactly what an auto-mocking container is. It really doesn't do any more than this. Okay? But it's, in the space of, 15 minutes or whatever it was, it didn't take long. We've been able to produce our own using an existing off-the-shelf dependency injection container. Yes? So we can now go on to our test and say, as we should now be able to have a test that says that the greeting that we've displayed in our world's most interesting MVC page, that greeting actually comes from our greeting service. Yes? Okay, let's do it. So, public void index greeting should come from greeting service. Okay? So I'll get the container and the SUT. Now you could quite easily put the SUT at this point into a test fiction setup or a test setup, so that you then generate outside of the your testing. There are some reasons why I don't like doing that, but I won't go into them now. So, what we've got is our result. It comes from our SUT index. Okay? So, first test actually shouldn't be the greeting should come back. The first is the index model. So let me just park this for a second, because the index model should actually be of our home index view result. Yeah, of the home index view model, shouldn't it? Yes, otherwise we've got no idea that that's what we're returning. And especially seeing as that the view result isn't strongly timed. So we need to make sure that is actually what we're returning back from our index. So, public void index view result model. Should be home index view model.
stats and our results from our stats, stat index, and the results of model should be home index view model. Again, this is why I like fluent assertion, because they just make sense. You can just read it straight through. Nice. Okay, so we've got a test now that says that what we're coming back is the right sign. We can now check to see whether the greasing measures that are contained within it is the right sign. So we'll take that. Okay. So we'll say that our results as home index view model dot greeting should. Now, actually, that's not really the right thing, is it? We can test to see if the greeting being set, but what we actually, as I said, what we actually want to see is whether the greeting service has been called. Yes. So let's go back and scratch that, and let's actually get the mock. So if we now go back to our container and resolve for us our mock of iGreeting service. Yes. I should be able to say, there's our mock, and I should be able to verify that our service dot get greeting, yeah, was actually called. And of course it wasn't. So by calling our container resolve at this point, we have actually got the same mock back. So the mock that was used to create the object that satisfied the constructor for the object that we're testing, so in this case our home controller, we've actually managed to get the same one back out. And we can verify that the greasing service has been, whether it's been called or not. And of course we can check to make sure that works. Because I can go back to here, and I could say battery to my greasing service. Greasing. And everything passes. Yes?
If we want to override the basic behavior of the mock, that's for a test, to give some specific greetings.
Yes?
Would that behavior then remain for the rest of cases after we?
Okay, so the question is, if you've overwritten for the mock, it depends where you do it. It depends where you do it. If you do it as part of a setup that you're using all over the place for a winter set, in this case the winter set and winter installer, then yes, it would happen everywhere. Because what you're doing is you're setting it up every single time we new up a container. Yes, that's the behavior we're setting up. So the singleton lifetime is bound to the lifetime of that container. Okay, so it's one of the reasons I don't like setting these things up in the test fixture, because if you set them up in the test fixture, you can easily behave. Yes, exactly. You can easily change the behavior of the container, and you've now got tests, especially if you're running tests in parallel. You can now get situations where your tests aren't behaving the way you would expect them to.
You could have a common setup method.
You could have a common setup method. Yes, you could. Yes, you could. But then that almost sort of drives you back to the idea of having a master object and having a master implementation, which is what we're trying to get away from in the first place. Yeah? Any other quick questions? Yes, sorry.
Then if we do it inside the test method,
Yeah.
How do we prevent, or how do we make sure that one of the interfaces is resolved that way and the other one is resolved still with the auto-mocking?
Oh, I see. Right. I will come back to that. If forgive me, I have got something slightly further on. So the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to get rid of Castle Winter. I'm going to replace it with the Ninjax mocking kernel. I much prefer the Ninjax mocking kernel. Again, it's a much more fluid. I find it's a much more fluid way of dealing with things. And also because my default IOC container for most projects that I deal with tends to be Ninjax. So I quite like the idea. Some people don't. Some people actually like to have a different IOC mocking container in their tests than they do from their application, because then sort of is a real separation But in some ways, and I'll show you why if I get time, I actually quite like using the same one, because then I can do some interesting things with the test later on. Okay? But yeah, so let's get rid of our let's get rid of Castle Winter from this. So I want to first of all just make sure I can actually get this in. I'm so glad I tested being able to do this with Get Offline. Honestly, of all the days for it to go down. Right, so this is, and I always get the name wrong. Right, so it is my project. Sorry, that's the only reason I've got the notes, so I've got something to refer to. So this is the Ninject locking kernel. Okay. There are, if you look online, there are lots of dependencies. There are lots of variations on this. They have an end substitute version, so already set up for you with a substitute as the mocking provider. There is one for RhinoMox. There is so pretty much any combination that you want to use is already there for you. Okay. But again, as I say, this is purely my own personal preference. The idea behind this is not here is Breakout, here is MockQ, these are the two you must use. It is much more a case of use the combination that works for you. Okay? This combination just happens to work for me. So, if you go back to our Solution Explorer, I'm just going to quickly get rid of the MockQ resolver, and I'm going to get rid of the unit test installer. Okay? So obviously things can happen to break. So, in this case, what I'll do is I'm simply going to get the kernel, and this kernel is going to be a new mocking kernel. And so the SUT I'll now simply resolve by saying kernel dot get home control. So the reason why I did this with the Castle Winter to begin with was just simply to show you, actually, there isn't anything magical to this. There isn't really a lot to this. The wire, but it's quite nice having the wiring done for you. It's quite nice having something fully tested, having a fully tested package up there. But at the end of the day, there isn't really a lot to this. It's getting your head around the idea that what you're doing is you're pulling out the same thing that's been used to resolve container in the first place. So let's replace that. So in this case, I want to get mock back, and the way I do it from this mocking kernel is to say that I want the kernel.mock, and I want the mock of the type that I was mocking. Right, so in this case the British service. And there you go. Really simple.
Is it the same lifetimes then?
It is the same lifetimes. So it does all of this, all the lifetime setup and everything else that we were dealing with beforehand is exactly the same. It's just that somebody has already pre-rolled all of this for you, and you can go to NuGet, you can install it, and you've got all of this available. The only thing you have to do now is to new up your kernel and then get your home control from it, or get the control or the object you want to test from. You now have a dependency injection driven unit test framework. Everybody with me? Oh, sorry, this is the question about.
Yeah, in the last, when you created your own,
Yes.
specifying the exact assembly to pull the tests, to pull your classes from.
Right.
Is there a way to specify it with this?
I don't
Or
need
you
to.
pull from everything.
I don't need to. The reason why I needed to do that with Castle Winter is I needed to be able to dictate I needed to be able to dictate lifetimes. This has already been done for us, and it's doing it in a slightly different way. I need no reference from here to my beyond having the project reference. I don't need to do anything else at all. Okay, so it's really nice and simple. That's what I mean when I say that you can actually simply go to the package manager console, and just do that. Okay? Really can. You just install the Ninja mocking kernel, mock here, or whichever version it is you want to use, whether you want to use any substitute or anything else. Does this make sense? Okay. So, just on its own, that's quite useful. Because just on its own, that makes your tests quite readable. But what if you want to do, and the question sort of leading on to this, what do you want to do when you want to control the injection of objects that are being put into your controller? Okay? So, this test is actually misleading. That test doesn't actually do. Hey. Stop the roll. Hey. Right. This test doesn't do what it says. Does it? All that does is that says that the greeting has been called at some point. It doesn't actually test to see whether that or the value that's been passed back out has actually come from a greeting service at all. All it says is that we've actually invoked it. So what we could do, obviously we could do the usual thing of setting up the result that comes back on, so we set up a mark to return a value. But I'm going to do this in a slightly different way. I'm actually going to use a spy. Oh, no, it's not a spy really, it's a test double. I'm going to use a fake to do this anyway. But just to show you that you can use the same sort of idea. So, what time have we got? We've got half an hour, brilliant. Okay. So what I can do is I can say that I'm going to have a public class, and I'm going to have a fake greeting service. Okay? And this will be an implementation of a greeting service. Okay? This greeting service is going to return a greeting. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in the greeting, and this is going to pass out. So a string greeting. Okay? And then this is going to come back out. Okay, with me so far? Now what I can do is I can say that my kernel bind our greeting service. Now I'm going to do this to constant, and I'm going to say I'll have a new fake greeting service. Okay? And I'm going to say this is an expected greeting. This is the greeting I would expect to see coming back out the other end. So I'll just materialise this. And this, I'm going to say, so I got introduced a while ago to the idea of coincidences. The guy at work kept on saying to me, your tests, if you're comparing a string going into a string coming out, they could be the same thing coming in out, going in and going out, but actually it could be a coincidence. It could be a coincidence that the test string you're putting in has been hard-coded in the item coming out. You might not actually be testing something. And it occurs to me, well, what if you use? Yeah? Why not? You've got a string coming in. I want to see the string coming back out the other end. Yes? So that where was that failing? Kernel bind our greeting service. Ah, right. Okay, that's because I'm trying to get I'm trying to get a mock, and of course there isn't one. But what I should be able to see now is that the result model as, and we already know this is a home index view model because we've got a test that proves that that's the case. Greeting should be expected greeting. Bosh. So, 2 seconds. So what we've been able to do here is we've been able to new up a kernel, and we've been able to say, actually, If you get asked for an iGreeting service, don't use a mock, use that one. Okay? So in fact what we're doing is we are creating a new greeting service with the expected greeting. That's going to be injected into our home controller. Our home controller is now getting the greeting from our fake greeting service, passing the result back out, and we can check to make sure that the result coming out is the same as the result that that is giving us. Now, that would be a pretty significant coincidence if those strings matched. Sorry, yes, there was a question.
Wouldn't it have been simpler to put the line where just pull out the mock
Yes.
setup
Yes.
and not have the fake flags?
Obviously, I could. Yes, I could, and I could. Sorry, I was simply using this as a demonstration. That you can use the ISC container as an extension or as an enabler for other tests.
Yeah.
So, for example, when you wanted to have an invocation spy, for example, where you want to be able to test that something has happened within an object, or let's say you want to be able to do a complex count. You know, or various other things that are hard to set up in a mock fashion, then you could use the inversion control container to provide a specialist implementation. But of course, it doesn't matter if I go back to my home controller and now add an iDate service and materialize that in. It doesn't matter. None of my tests broke. Okay, so this would be in the case of that last test, what's happening is the control is our system is going to give us a fake there and a mock there. Yeah.
Could we agree to stop once we have those with the mocking?
Yeah.
Mock one, and then you can start the.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Because it is the mock. It is the same object. So as long as you get the mock out before you actually do your invocation on the sut itself, then yes, absolutely, you can set it up in any way you want. Okay? Ready? Any other questions at the moment? Yes.
How do we do it? Now we have a third parameter in the constructor.
Yes.
That is not the interface. Maybe it's a bad practice, but how would it solve then the interface?
Well, it does depend. It does depend largely on your on the version control container you're using. Some ISC containers allow you to don't mind. Some ISC containers will simply provide you with an instantiated object. Depends how your binding rules go. Generally, this is why I would favour an interface-driven dependency pattern. But there's nothing to stop you doing that. There's nothing to stop you saying that yes, I'm here as a concrete object that I'm going to provide at this point. Of course, what you could do is you could provide an abstract class, or you could provide a class with abstract methods or virtual methods. And if they're virtual, you can still mock them. Okay, so the trick is if the method that you're dealing with is virtual, you can actually then produce a proxy for it. Okay, but generally that's why I tend to like the idea of providing an interface, because then it just the mental process of saying I don't care what's behind this. Okay, even if it's a facade. For example, if I'm ever having to do anything with HTTP context, don't mock HTTP context. Just don't. If you want to waste brain cycles like there's no tomorrow, just don't. Bung it behind a facade. It binds to a facade and use it, and then at least you've got something you can test against. Just don't do all HTTP context. It will just drive you nearly insane. Okay. Sorry, was there a question at the back? No? Okay. So, let's just quickly wrap things up. So, we've got an ISC container that we're dealing with. What we don't have now is actually a working application, because even though our tests work, right, we don't actually have a working application, because we've got no way of binding the, because we've now got a no parameterless constructor defined. So, what we'll do is we'll fix this. And this is fairly easy to do. Let's just go back to our package management console, and it's for the first time I should install something into this project. Okay, so what I want is I want an inject. Maybe C5, there it is. Oh, sorry. That's I can't blame it on you again. Just in case anybody hasn't seen it today, as I say, there are currently 0 packages. Actually, that's not true. There's something wrong with the search index. So the packages, if you know the package names, you can actually still go and get them, but there is a problem. It's going to do this again, isn't it? Why? Just why? Do you know, the amount of times I've tried this and I've prepared this demo and I've tried this by physically disconnecting from every wireless network in the planet. It's gone through every time. I've never ever had to do it twice. Anyway, so this is not. I can now run this, and this is actually still going to fail. This is going to fail now because I've got no bindings. I've put an inject in place. Inject does all this lovely stuff. It's wired itself in as the dependency container within our MVC application, but we haven't provided any implementations at this point. This is one of the reasons why I like using the same dependency. The same dependency injection container, the same IOC container in my tests I like is in my web project, because I can now do things like this. So, what our entry points in an MVC application are what? Controls. Really? That's the things that that's what we actually activate with our when we hit our we go through the route. So if we can satisfy those, then yes, there's a fairly good chance we might have a working application. So how about we do something like this? So what I do is I tend to go to my app start, there's my inject web common, and I'll tend to make a new module. So and I'll bind to that new module. So load application module. Okay. So I'm going to create that class. Derive that from the inject module. And implement. So this just gives me a straight load method again. Overkill? No. There is a very good reason for this. So let's go back to our unit tests. And let's add a new class. And this test is going to be all controllers. Okay, so this is a test fixture. Okay, there's it. There it is there. Now, how many people are familiar with, do one of you know how to use NUnit? Familiar with NUnit? Yeah. Okay. One of the nice things you can do with NUnit is you can provide test cases for tests from other things. So you can actually provide enumerables, or you can provide objects or lists, and you can run tests against those lists. So what if we provided a list of all the controllers in our target application? Yes? So we can do this quite easily by saying, let's have, now I am going to use a private kernel here, because I'm only going to do this. This is one of these occasions where a setup is actually quite useful, and I'll show you why in a minute. But let's have an enumerable of types. Enumerable of type. And this is going to be all controllers. I can't call it all controllers because that will conflict with the name of the. Okay. And this I'm going to use. Okay, so I'm going to return a another nice bit of syntax that comes from float assertions. All types from assembly containing MVC application. And, sorry, that's killing Castle Windsor again. Why is it? Oh, I haven't uninstalled it. Sorry. All types from type of MVC application. I want the assembly from that. Okay, that implements. Control. Why doesn't it like that? Something it doesn't like. Hang on a second. What's it doing? All types. Let's just do it this way. From assembly containing MVC application. Yeah, but why isn't it?
Where bracket?
All types of I'm missing something. I'm not entirely sure what. Ah, this is wonderful.
You're not using your castle thing again.
Ah, I am. Yes, sorry, that is exactly why. So from type of MVC application dot assembly. That's from there, and that should be it. Say again. One word.
You take out the using castle thing at the top, see what goes on.
Yes, that's a very good point. Right, yes. Of course, what I should have done, I should have installed the package, my project name. There we go. That's better. Hey. Thank you. I knew there was something simple there. And the amount of times I've typed that, I've used this so many times. Anyway. Right. That'll be a lesson you'd never do a lifetime. Right. So I'm going to do a setup, and this will be a test fixture setup. Now the reason I don't want to do this is something I only want to do once for all the tests that I'm going to be running. So there's my test fixture setup, and this I'm going to say I want a kernel to be a new standard kernel. Now this is what the inject refers to as a standard kernel. So I'm not using the mocking kernel, I'm just using the standard one. Okay, but because I brought in the inject mocking kernel, not mock you, I have the standard kernel to play with, right? So I can now say I want to load my application module. So this is going to load in module. Did I make that public? Probably not. Yeah. Right. So this is now going to load in my settings from the live application. Now, what I could do here is if I knew that there was a binding to a database, I could rebind the database interaction. So I could move database binding tasks into its own file, for example, so I could separate those out. But what I've got here is straightforward bindings, and I can now go through my tests, and I can say that public void controllers should be bindable, okay? Because let's face it, they should be. So we're going to be given the type of the controller. We'll say that there's a test case source. Okay, and the test case source is our controllers. So it uses reflection to go back and find that. Okay. It's now going to drive our tests with every one of the types that comes out from here. So what it should now be able to do is say, let's say we want an action, and our action goes to, the only thing we want the action to do is kernel get the type. Don't want to do anything else with it, we just want to make sure that that is bindable, right? And the reason I'm doing it this way is that I can do a fluid assertion on it, and I can say that the action should not throw an activation exception. So I don't care what anything else it does, but I'm damn certain I don't want it to throw an activation exception. Okay? So I've got a build error. Yeah. Because of that, let's remove. And there we go. And I have a failing test, which is exactly what I should do. I have a failing test because error activating, no greeting service, no matching bindings are available. So by using the same IC container in my web application as I'm using for my mocking, as my auto mocking container, I'm actually able to share setup as well. So it gives me above and beyond. That's another really nice value add. So of course I can now go back to my module, and I can simply provide some very basic. There we go. So I bind my greeting service to the greeting service, which will quickly bring in, and that we can materialize like that. So I've got a moan about implementations, so let's do that. So okay, we still got a failing test because we haven't got a date service, so we can bind the date service. Okay, again, that's going to moan because that is sort of my date service that go members and return date time today. And everything goes green. Okay? And it will come as absolutely no surprise that when I run this. Thanks for the forward. So we've got a few minutes left. There isn't really a lot more to say on this apart from what toolkit should you use. As I say, use whatever suits you. Use whatever suits your workflow, use whatever suits your environment, the toolkits that you're currently using. If you're already using an IC container in your web application, well, why don't you use the same one when it comes to your test? Because then there are things that you can share across from your test to your live application. So you get the benefit of being able to use an auto-locking container, plus you get everything else over the top of it. And there are any number of combinations out there that you can use. So use what matches your environment, is what I'm saying. And that's basically it. So, any questions? No?
Is there anything out there for Unity?
Sorry, say that again.
Is there anything out there for Unity?
Yes, I believe there are. I mean, I'm afraid I'm not a big fan of Unity. I find
Me neither.
most people I know who've used Unity for any length of time get driven nearly up the wall by it. But no, I mean, that's a bit unfair. But I believe there are. But again, Unity is actually Unity is not that bad. And again, you could do exactly the same thing as I did with Castle Winter. The dependency results are all there. So there's nothing to stop you. If there isn't something out there, generally the process of wiring in the mocking container, the mock implementation that we're after, is fairly trivial. Yes, definitely. I've definitely seen structured map and artifact. There are definitely implementations for that. As I say, your best bet is, unfortunately, I can't do a search on UGET today because you might notice UGET's got a bit of a problem. But yes, they are definitely out there. They are definitely out there. But as I say, if you are using your own, and let's face it, some people have rolled their own dependency services for MVC because it's fairly easy to do. There are various things out there like MVVM Lite and others. There's nothing to stop you converting it into your own implementation. So I'm going to, I will tweet later sorry, I'm doing that. I will tweet later where the GitHub repository for this project is, if